Welcome to Pivotalogic Tech Talk featuring PhillyG. Tech Talk offers great technology insights and experts to keep IT simple for your business.
Hello, everybody. It's me, PhillyG, bold, courageous, and battle ready. Thanks for joining today. I'm the CIO of Pivotalogic. My job is to use my 20-plus years of technology and business experience and help customers design, build, and implement their technology plans. Today's Tech Talk is entitled Ensuring a Safe and Successful Return to School, Part 2. We chose this topic because our schools have been asking, how do we need to be better prepared and properly protect our students and prepare for the fall and potential continuation of the pandemic and remote learning. We want to welcome back our expert guest today, Jim Nash, Information Security Evangelist at FRSecure, and Ryan Cloutier, Principal Consultant at SecurityStudio, discuss the top 3 challenges for the K-12 schools and 4 recommendations to be better prepared for the fall. Depending on where you're at in your IT journey, we're here to help, whether it's improving your current plan or architecting your digital transformation. We know that time is tight, and you always most likely need help to accomplish all of this before September, and we're here to partner with you to ensure a safe and successful return to school. With that, let's get started.
Yeah, I'll start and then maybe Ryan can jump in. You know, I've got 4 kids that are still in the house of our 6 kids that we have. And, you know, we're still in this COVID period and all the learning is happening via technology. You know, I will tell you that very few textbooks or anything along those lines were cracked open. There were very, very few books being read. It was all online. So there have been some issues, I think, with breakdowns in tech, but I think what we're going to wind up seeing as a result of COVID, and Ryan, you may actually already have intel on this, but I think that there's going to be a giant infusion of new solutions, and I'm doing air quotes on solutions, that come forward to say, oh, we've got your remote learning toolkit here, and it's all going to be integrated, and it's all going to be fantastic, and you know, world peace and fantastic stuff will happen as a result of it. And it's probably not even close to being that great. But if a school district doesn't have a security plan around the tech that they choose to implement, then there's a problem. And you know, all the well-intended vendors out there may not be as singularly focused on security as they should be. And that's why someone like us should be a part of the equation, because one, we've already established you don't necessarily have the expertise or experience, and you may not actually have a security plan available to you, but remote learning is probably going to continue for a while. And I think that it's something that necessitates having a solid plan so that everybody involved, as the slide says, teachers, students, parents, IT staff, I would even say including office staff, can deliver that maximum outcome that everybody's looking for. So Ryan, talk about that probably new rush for new solutions, if you would.
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of that. And what I would tell the listeners is most of you actually already have what you need. It just has not been set up correctly. So that's where, you know, working with Pivotal or working with, you know, FR SecurityStudio, you know, working with a partner is kind of the theme here, can help you figure out, you know, do you already have the necessary tools? And it's just a matter of configuration. So I would caution anyone against purchasing a solution before looking at what you already have. I've been helping districts ever since this COVID thing started with, you know, remote device management, remote content filtering. How do I go about this? What does this look like? And the reality is the majority of them had everything they needed in the toolkit already. They didn't need to make any net new purchase. What they did need was some consulting, some advisement, and some configuration assistance to actually get the maximum security value out of the solutions they had in place. So I would say start there before you spend on a new shiny object. Check to see what you already have in the toolbox. You may have all the tools you need, but you might need some help to get them set up correctly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think on the survey that I'm reading, and I kind of wish I would have put it in here, but we can talk to it. But one of the big ones that they really came up was actually number one was security, but number two was content filtering. They didn't have an adequate content filtering solution in place to effectively keep students safe from cybersecurity attacks and phishing attempts. And then
Yeah,
number two was lack of plan to scale and support technology tools, including content filtering again, remote troubleshooting support, and device asset management. They had no plan for that, and they really struggled to get devices in the hands of the people and make sure they had internet and Wi-Fi spots connected. Those are some pretty big areas there. So how do we address those concerns? I mean, they're kind of like not everything we do, but how do we go about trying to boil that down to take proactive steps to be better prepared?
yeah. So I think I see two paths right now. So there's the how do I recover from the decisions I already made, right? I've already handed out devices that maybe aren't as secure as they need to be, or I've made certain decisions in remote learning that maybe I didn't have security as the main focus when I made them. So I think there's that cleanup. But then there's the how do I plan for next year? How do I plan for the fall? And I think, you know, connectivity is a huge issue, and that's going to come down to, you know, how much connectivity is in your community. If you're a very small rural community in northern Minnesota, you may not have access to that. And so I think I've seen a lot of schools get creative and do things like Wi-Fi from the parking lot, or putting buses that are Wi-Fi enabled into key areas within the community. So I think, you know, first I'm going to tell you creativity is going to be your best friend, because you are going to have to be creative, because there will be things that are unique about you and your community that might not apply to others. So from a connectivity perspective, I think that's work with your broadband providers, work with your partners, figure out what options are on the table. In content filtering perspective, it's all about using cloud-based content filtering. Get off of prem. On-prem filtering only works on-prem. And we know that we're potentially entering what I'm calling the accordion era, where we open and close and open and close, right? We really don't know what the fall looks like. So we've got to plan for regular return to school. We've got to plan for complete remote learning. And we've got to plan for that third stage, which is the accordion effect. So cloud-based content filtering is definitely important. You need to work with somebody to get that configured and set up. Remote device management, super important, right? And what I said earlier, I think a lot of the schools actually have this tech in place, but it's not being leveraged because they haven't had a technology preparedness plan. They haven't had an assessment conducted of what tools they have in the kit today, and are they being used to maximum effectiveness.
That's a good point. I think our approach is going in not to forklift everything, but to understand what they have, what works, what doesn't work, and how can we enhance that service offering to be better prepared for that learning experience. So that's great stuff. Number two, we're going to jump to that. It's challenge and safety training. And through the last, let's say 10 years, I see a lot of companies moving to the cloud. We do a lot of cloud migration for applications, for storage, for disaster recovery, for security, for all kinds of cloud deployments. But you see, obviously, we talked about more applications online, and remote learning now in full swing is here to stay. A lot of these companies are saying, okay, well, we can have half work from home and half work from the office, and we can put a solution together that's going to work better for us, but we really need to be concerned about the risk and safety concerns. You see the quote on the slide from a IT director I talked with last week that he's very concerned about risk and safety concerns for their students and teachers and staff.
Yeah, I think that cloud is something that actually must factor into any upcoming decisions on spend. At the state, I actually had to pass a law that said that cloud should be considered first before they move to anything else. And the three of us can attest to this. The cult of the blinky light likes to have stuff on-prem, right? And on-prem, from a security perspective, is not as robust as having a cloud part of your solution. And it could be prem, near-prem, cloud, or a combination of all of the above. But I think from how do you make sure that you are, as this slide says, that you're handling the safety first? Well, safety is security, and security means having that data potentially locked up and protected as best you possibly can. And Ryan, I'm sure you might have a stat as to the number of school districts that you've been to that are still singularly dedicated to on-prem solutions.
Yeah, I would say that that's really not too many places. You have to get very narrow. Google has pretty much dominated the school market. So almost every school in the United States of America has some kind of Google presence. I think where you see a desire to on-prem is around device management, security, content filtering. Maybe they're hosting the student information system or HR system, kind of those core functions. A lot of the curriculum is actually hosted in the cloud already. The problem is that they're not treating that as cloud. It's just a website. It's just an app. So they don't have a holistic approach to say cloud is part of the whole data center ecosystem. There are still pockets of the blinky light cult, right? Of the, I built this machine in 1994 and it's still good. So I think that's changing. I think they are embracing the cloud, but I don't see them necessarily doing it in a cloud focused way as much as kind of treating it like apps on a cell phone.
Yep.
All right, that's a good point. I think that they don't always enforce the security policy on these, cloud environments or online application environments, and try to, expand that security policy throughout all the applications. And there is a lot of on-prem stuff that's moving. It may not be their mission critical applications, but they're highly important. And they're moving those to the cloud too, and wrapping security around that, and make sure they have a unified security approach.
Yep.
Next slide, we wanted another thing about training. Now we want to talk a little bit about training. I think training is really important. I think it's a big part of it is security awareness training, and making sure that people know what to click on and what not to click on, and then just overall training for even maybe IT staff. So we talk a bit about training.
Yeah, I think I'll give you a real world example. So I have a district that implemented Splunk. A salesperson did a great job, sold them on implementing Splunk. The district could afford it, so they implemented it. They didn't at that time have any training on the use of that tool. So for the better part of a year, that tool basically sat idle. They paid the license fees, and there was no kind of training plan. And when I came along, it was one of the key areas that I identified was making sure your staff are adequately trained on the technology they're going to use so that they can use it safely. And the other piece is when you do security awareness training, you need to make it personal, and you need to do it more than once a year. And I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to say the focus in 2020 should not be on security awareness training. It should be on embedding security into your culture. That it should become a core part of your school culture, just like physical safety. Digital safety is just as impactful to the successful lives and productive citizens that we're trying to create in these schools. Digital safety and physical safety are separated. And so I think it's time we focus on safety culture. And the only way we can do that is through effective training.
Good point.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. A friend and client of ours in a different state is in a position where they are actually trying to drive the cyber literacy of every student by the time they graduate from high school. And what Ryan just said was their mission, that they want to turn out cyber literate citizens. And to do that, they are starting at the kindergarten and above level to say, here are the basics. And I would argue, and I think this would be a really fun study to do, Ryan and Phil, is we should have a phishing attack competition between students and adults. I think that if we were to educate them both in the same way, that the students would do a much better job of not clicking on stuff than the adults would, because I think that the students of today have become so attuned to technology being a part of their daily life and their daily experience, that if you tell them, hey, this clicking on stuff and possibly ransomware or malware or whatever could be introduced into your life, and you can alleviate that by not clicking on stuff, that message is received better by kids in K-12 than the adults right now.
What I tell the kids, if you click it, it breaks your Xbox. That seems to
nice.
not want to do it.
Nice.
Good point. So we've talked about remote learning. We talked about safety and training, and now we're going to talk about partnership. And from our perspective, there's been a lot of success stories out there for customers and schools that have done well. But there's been some challenges of some schools not prepared, but doesn't surprise us with the unusual impact of COVID-19. It's really impacted the students, teachers, and staff working from home. And I think a lot of times is that IT can be somewhat overwhelmed, and they weren't really ready for a big onslaught of remote workers, and sometimes they just need some help.
Well, I completely agree with you, Phil. And I would say that in my experience, the districts that handled this best already had existing partnerships in place that they could leverage. They were able to call, that partner and say, I need help getting remote work set up in the next week and a half. It was the districts that didn't have those partnerships in place in advance that I really saw struggle, because now they didn't have time to go find a partner. They just had to get laptops and lunches out. They just had to do what they had to do. And so even though they were sitting there going, man, I really wish I had some help, we realized that choosing a partner takes time. A lot of times there can be RFPs involved. There can be, bureaucracy and process, especially in the K-12 space. And so those districts that didn't have a partner now are definitely going, man, that would have really helped me. And the ones that did said, no, we're okay. So I can't stress enough the need of a partnership, because unless you're going to be able to specialize in this and have a dedicated workforce, and frankly, that does need to be more than just one human on your IT team, you're going to be able to dedicate a full-time focus to this. You really should strongly consider a partnership, whether that's a full-time partnership, an ad hoc partnership, whatever that looks like. Really take time to think about that, because in a moment's notice, if you have an existing partnership, you can call for help. But if you don't, just like we saw with COVID, you're really going to be in a very poor position to go and find a partner when you need it most.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Ryan, earlier you had talked about that you're a virtual chief information security officer for many companies. Some of the listeners may not know what that is, but essentially it's a chief information security officer that you rent. And that's something that our company offers, is expertise that you don't necessarily have to pay full-time all the time, plus benefits and all that. You actually have access to a vendor who provides a number of hours for you per month to coach you through things, but also to be available to you when stuff hits the fan, much like COVID. And I just wanted to also point out to the listeners, guys, that this is not something that is singularly attached to K-12. There were a lot of companies in the private sector and in the public sector, government units, that weren't prepared for this. But the ones who were, and I can't give their names, but there were some that had planned for this, and they didn't know that it was going to be COVID, but it was going to be pick a thing. I was talking to one of my good friends the other day who's a chief information security officer at a very large household name. And he said, well, Jim, we recognized that the plan was in place. We all had a copy of the plan, and the players who were supposed to be involved in the plan came to a conference room and said, okay, we have to do step 1, 2, and 3. And one of them was send people home with the tech that they need. And they stood up over the course of a week, over 10,000 VPNs. Now, if they didn't have a plan, they couldn't have gotten that done. And I think that's where this is so important. We've talked about planning, but you can get planning assistance through a partnership, much like we have available to you right here.
That's a really good point. I think really understanding the environment, what are their priorities, and understanding how we can augment what they're doing today to have the results that we're trying to get. It doesn't have to break the bank. It could be IT support. It could be security. It could be business continuity planning. There's all kinds of things that come in to the fold, and it's near impossible to speculate what you need. But if we jump on these calls and we can understand a little bit about your environment, look at your security posture, your availability, and what are your goals and objectives, we can put a plan together and we can execute on the plan. So planning and partnership is huge. I think the one thing that Pivotalogic and FRSecure and Visual Studio is they take partnership pretty serious. We're high integrity, honest companies that just want to help. And we just want to be able to help you through your challenges and make your life better. So with that, we're going to go real quick to the top 4 recommendations for K-12 to ensure a safe and successful return to school. So the first one, we're just going to kind of dovetail on the top recommendations. The first one is safety and training. And I believe, Ryan, you're going to take that one, I believe.
Yeah, so the most important thing that you can do is start to assess your safety and your training and make sure that folks know what they need to know. And that's going to start with, knowing what your risks are. Are your workers, how risky are your workers? What are those areas to focus on? So it's super, super important to go through your security awareness training. Make sure you've accounted for things like COVID, so that you understand where your gaps are. That's just such an important part, because that's going to help you. Those plans will then help you be prepared to take action when you need to. So it's absolutely most in my mind.
Perfect. So number 2 recommendation is kind of the remote learning. I'll speak to that briefly. Really, our recommendation is review the remote learning policies and procedures to make sure you have them documented and you have a plan for them, and they can be easily distributed to teachers, staff, parents, and in talking with a lot of coworkers here at Pivotalogic, many of our employees have young children that they had a school throughout this period, and they just felt there wasn't a plan. They didn't really know what to do, when to call, how to operate Zoom, and really just have a plan in place, a process that you can test and execute on, and just ensure workers remain productive. I mean, that's really important through proactive insights into end user experience. So knowing the teachers, students, staff's journey when they're accessing these applications from home is critical to providing the performance and the uptime that they need to do their work. So knowing all the way down to the laptop or the iPad, on the router at home, to the local ISP, to the application provider, or to the data center, having complete insight and visibility into that is key. And there's dashboards that can be set up that shows green, yellow, and red for each user, and you can quickly disseminate where there may be problems before they even call you and say, guess what, I can't connect to this particular application. Another thing that we're seeing is make sure you're adding COVID-19 mitigation best practices to their business continuity plan and disaster recovery plans, and ensuring that we have from the start security assessment, and we look at the business continuity, we look at your disaster recovery plan as starting points. Okay, number 3, we talked about partnerships. Ryan, why don't you cover this? We talked about it, but we'll just have you go through the recommendation.
Yeah, so the recommendation is look at what you have in existence already. Check your contracts. Super important to understand how your partnerships are working. Look for gaps. Make sure when you're looking at your partners, if there are gaps in what they provide, you may want to consider looking at other partners. If you don't have a partner, it's going to be important for you to find a technology partner that's going to be able to help you overcome any gaps in resources or expertise. And I'll go back to it. I've said it the entire time, and I'll say it one last time. This is very specialized work. It requires full-time focused dedication. If your partner is not full-time focused on this, if they do this and this and this and this, they sell laptops, they do 500 other things, that might not be the most effective partner. So just really look at this as being kind of a specialty thing where you need that help. And then as you vet those partners, make sure that you're looking at terms of service, the contract details. Will they be there? Do they understand K-12? Do they understand your business vertical? Not every technology partner out there gets it. Thankfully, we have organizations like Pivotalogic who do, which is why Jim and I are on the call today, because they get it, right? So I can't stress enough how important it is to have a partner, but it's also equally important to have a partner that really is in it with you, understands what your needs are, help you craft a plan for success.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. The last one is really, have an action plan. We talked about a lot of, planning, whether it be security, availability, business continuity, disaster recovery. We really need a plan. And there's a lot here today. I mean, it's hard to kind of maybe figure out where to start, but this action plan you need to create the action plan and written technology preparedness plan. And a written technology preparedness plan should include conducting a remote worker security risk assessment, reviewing remote learning policies and procedures, and looking at a technology partner to help with areas of IT that you may have lack of resources or expertise and need some help to ensure a safe and successful return to school. So that's really the top 4 recommendations. Any other comments there before we close it out?
Yeah, I'd say on the action plan, all the different things that you're going to need, technology, devices, how to stand up something in an emergency, cybersecurity awareness. That plan can't just exist and sit on a shelf for the day that it might happen. You need to be testing the plan. You need to go through an exercise that you say, okay, looks like COVID is sending us back into remote learning. Now we test and see how quickly we can stand it up. Or you do a test to see, we've had a ransomware event. We have to test, what do we do? Because having a plan is really only half of that battle. If you don't do anything with it and you just say to people as if you were bragging to say, yep, we got us a really nice plan and it's fantastic. If you don't test it, there's not a lot of value to it. So you have to be able to do like that senior executive that I talked about. They all got into a room and they knew what their jobs were. They knew what their roles were, and they just began running through that drill. It's very important that in all the different planning that you do and all the money that you'll pump into this, that you just don't put it on a shelf and point to it every now and then when people are taking a tour of your business or your facility to say, yep, that's our preparedness plan. Isn't it pretty? You have to be able to actually test it.
And I'll add to that real quick.
Great point. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was just going to add to it. Find a partner and have it peer reviewed. One of the things that I've seen are plans that are wrote by folks that know what they know. They don't necessarily account for the things they don't know. So any good plan should be reviewed by somebody else that has expertise in the area, just to ensure that you don't have any gaps. And then I'll reiterate what Jim said: you have to test it. I think it was Mike Tyson who said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And that's exactly what it did, right? It's been a punch in the face. So, have that plan peer reviewed, have that plan vetted by a partner, and then test it and make sure it actually works. And then lastly, the plan should be a living document. and you should focus on continually updating, reviewing, and adding and taking away from that plan as needed.
That's a good point, and we really just want to help you, and keep it simple and secure. And I think one thing is we just need to understand where you're at in your technology life cycle, understanding the gaps and understanding what's the kind of future state. So if you go back to the original slide, which was our methodology that we've used for the last 8 years that works, people don't know where to start, right? So they just start throwing all this money at these point solutions, and before you know it, you have a solution that doesn't work, you can't test it, and they're looking for more solutions to replace the ones they had that were failed. So the 3 steps would be plan it, which would be some type of assessment review, and then build it would be looking at the architectural components it would take to deliver a solution based on those recommendations. And then manage it is, it's a co-management thing of you manage some things, we manage others. So using that plan, right, and that proven process really does help put together a better solution for your school. To finish up, I just wanted to thank Ryan and Jim for joining today. What a great conversation, great resources, and I really appreciate their time and expertise. And, if you're wondering where do we go next or how do we get there, you can visit us at pivotalogic.com/connect. Just fill out the form. We'll jump on a quick call. We'll ask you a couple questions and we'll figure out the best approach. And we appreciate your time, and you guys have a great weekend and have a blessed day. See you later. Bye-bye.